Rhiannon.
Today, the 17th of March, is a most significant day for democracy. We have achieved Senate voting reform. Now, yes, many other improvements are needed. Many other improvements are needed, but today clearly has been advanced for our democratic processes. First off, I think on this point, just let's quieten down for a moment. I think this is where we would have unity. There's people in this building who have been working continuously, some for 30 hours, I've just found out. So let's come together and thank the attendants here. And a particular thank you to John, our senior attendant, who I understand has done over 30 hours straight. Then there's the security, the clerks themselves, the Comcar drivers and everybody else who have kept this building going so we could do our work. Important work, but that's a huge contribution. The journey for Senate voting reform, for reform of upper house voting, started for the Greens and for myself in 1999 in New South Wales. It's actually been what was achieved there and been achieved here is quite similar. But it is time for some thank yous for the people who have helped us on that journey. First off, the person who actually suggested how to deal with this very challenging situation that occurred in New South Wales when 81 parties in 1999 ran, 81 parties on what became known as a giant tablecloth ballot paper election. Paul Fitzgerald, an author, a Marrickville councillor and the founding member of the New South Wales Greens, came up with a very simple idea. And remember, for all the debate we've had, the beauty of this legislation is actually in its simplicity. And Paul Fitzgerald came up with that idea, is that it doesn't need to be the backroom deals, it can be the voters. The ballot paper doesn't need to change. What will just change is that the voters can put 1, 2, 3, number all the boxes if they like. In the case of New South Wales, or just 1. So again, the simplicity, giving it back to the voters. But on top of that, I am very proud of the role the Greens at federal level have played. And it was after the 2004 election that the then Greens leader, Bob Brown, rang me to ask me about our experience in New South Wales, because he realised that the Senate needed similar reform. And that's when Bob worked on his first bill. Former Senator Bob Brown worked on his first bill. It was 2004 for Senate voting reform. Then there's been more bills, and then our next leader, Christine Milne, took it up with great passion. And I remember one of her final speeches in the party room before she left us was to impress on us how important this is. And she actually foreshadowed it would be difficult, it would be challenging, but just to stick with it. And then our current leader, Richard Di Natale, Senator Richard Di Natale, has picked this up with an equal passion, and it's been a pleasure to work with him. I did just want to say to the House that unfortunately one of our members, Senator Nick McKim, has not been able to be with us. He was here on Tuesday, and yet again he often talked to me with his great commitment to this reform. He was very excited about it. But he received the sad news that his father was dying and he had to leave us. But one of those little stories, one of those personal stories that we all have, that his dad didn't actually want him to go back home. His dad knew what was happening. Dad was very proud of him, obviously, wanted him to stay here. He went home, and one of his final words was, "Give him hell." So we missed you, Nick, but it meant a lot to us. But then there's the experts who really have assisted all of us, and we've quoted different people. But I did want to particularly thank Anthony Green, George Williams, Ken Bonham, and many others who took time with submissions, becoming witnesses to the inquiries that we've had. And then I also wanted to say a particular thank you to my colleagues on the JSEM. On JSEM, we all know when we work on committees, that's quite an interesting dynamic. You become friends and colleagues with people who, in many other areas, you don't agree with. So Tony Smith, the now Speaker of the House of Representatives, then, when I went on to JSEM, was the chair of that. Did a very fine job. Really fine job. Gary Gray, Alan Griffin, gave a great deal of expertise to that committee. And that first JSEM committee, coming out of that 2013 election, remember at this time we're a unity ticket. Like it had been a unity ticket in New South Wales with all parties, All parties agreed when the New South Wales Greens put up that proposal, let's have optional preferential voting. That's how we started the journey at a federal level. All parties were on board. JSEM was united. If you look at the report, unity in that report. And so I particularly want to thank, as I said, Tony Smith, Gary Gray, Alan Griffin, but I think in terms of our final thank yous, it goes to somebody very special to this House, and that is former Senator John Faulkner. The contribution he made in so many areas is outstanding, and I think we all know that this House misses him, whatever party you come from. But he made a very, very pertinent comment about this very legislation. He said, "I would say this reform is uncontroversial and it is certainly overdue." So again, to finish up, the beauty of this reform that we're dealing with here today is really in its simplicity.
Senator Dastyari.
The beauty of this reform is really in its simplicity. For all the complexity, for all the arguments that we've been through, it comes down to one significant change, and that is the voter, they're going to still get their ballot paper. What they will be doing won't be that different. The instructions will be slightly different, but they will be able to allocate their own preferences above or below the line. Above the line, they will be instructed to vote 1 to 6 at least. Below the line, 1 to 12 at least. That is a really excellent progress in our democratic process. One of the wonderful things that I've learned in hearing from Australian Electoral Commission and the many times that they give evidence is their deep commitment to ensure that votes, that where the intent of the voter is clear, that that vote is counted. And I do believe with these reforms that we will see a greater participation. It was disappointing to hear Senator Wong again go on about the issue of the divisions that she sees that she was trying to flare up around donations. The Greens have a solid commitment. Absolutely, you can't blemish this one in terms of our commitment to political donations reform. What Labor did today, they'll get out there with their social media, etc., but it was just a tactic. It was just a tactic to try and pull this down, because they know if we had voted in this chamber and got a majority for political donation, those measures that they put forward, we would not have Senate voting reform. And Senator Doug Cameron, I made these comments when you were out of the chamber. You have done so many negotiations in your life for working people, for workers in the metal industry, in the manufacturing industry, and you know, probably more than anyone, that you don't bundle everything into your negotiations. Into your negotiations. And finally, we started on this journey with a unity ticket. We had the unity ticket, as I said, in New South Wales. We had the unity ticket here. Labor jumped overboard. They were the ones that decided that they were going to give it away. They've ended on the wrong side of history. They've been left in the back room, and there's no backroom dealers there with them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Rhiannon.